Welcome, I'm Rabbi Phil Bressler of Beit Am in Corvallis, Oregon, and this is the daily summary video for the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi Daily Halakha Learning Project, covering the passage from Sivan 96 Seif 1 to Sivan 96 Seif 5. You can find links to the Hebrew and English text of this passage and to the calendar of upcoming passages in this video's description. So we are finally arriving at the end of Hilchot Shabbat, the laws of Shabbat. We've made it through all of the laws covering the daytime. It's now time to talk about the end of Shabbat. That's Saturday evening Ma'ariv and Havdalah. So it's good to start your Saturday Ma'ariv later than usual and to stretch out those introductory lines. Kedei lehosif mechol al hakodesh. So in order to take from the ordinary and add to the holy. The Amidah of Saturday Ma'ariv is a weekday Amidah, but there is a special insertion in the first of the petitionary blessings that starts Atah chonen la'adam da'at. The insertion starts with Atah chonan tanu, and it expresses gratitude specifically for giving us the ability to distinguish sacred and ordinary. After the Amidah and Chatzi Kaddish, Psalm 91 is recited, which is introduced by the last verse of the preceding Psalm 90. Apparently this was the regular way Psalms were introduced in ancient Israel, but it also so happens that it works thematically. Here, the last verse of Psalm 90 acts as a kind of a prelude. We're about to go and do the work of our week, and we pray that it'll be worthwhile and pleasing to God. So we actually do only recite Psalm 91 with its introduction when it's a complete week coming up. If there's a Yom Tov day coming up at all, we don't recite that. On to Havdalah. So Havdalah means separation, and there are three blessings that are part of the Havdalah ritual over three ritual objects that affect the separation of the holiness of Shabbat from the ordinariness of the rest of the week. These are the wine, the spices, and the candle. It acts as a kind of a bookend to the Friday night ritual, and you can see some of the parallels there with the candle and the wine involved. It's a little bit more relaxed in terms of the materials that are required. Probably, I think there's some leeway given because, how could you acquire more of something if you ran out? So, for example, you can use beer or mead or any other chomer medina in case of wine, should you run out of wine, because how are you going to buy more wine on Shabbat? Your bisamim, your spices, can be just about anything with a fragrance, anything you have available. Once Seudah Shlishit ends, you should wrap up your eating and drinking until after Havdalah. I wonder if this is so that you don't end up becoming too drunk. They're saying have a normal, if slightly festive dinner, but don't go too wild before you've got one more ceremony still to do. Don't do any melacha prior to Havdalah. Should go without saying, but this is seemingly undermined by the following sentence, which is that if you need some lights prior to Havdalah, then say the Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'chol bracha first. I imagine because it's getting dark and light is needed in order to find the candle, pour the wine, things like that. This actually reminds me of another experience at Camp Ramah. The camp director loved when we would lead Havdalah with guitars for the whole camp. But in order to do that, we had to take out our guitars, which were muktzah, and which we put away for Shabbat, and we had to tune them up and we had to rehearse before actually making Havdalah. So this is a way you can kind of get around that. And note, there's nothing here about 3 stars in the sky or anything like that. The Kitzur is concerned with what you might call the subjective experience of ending Shabbat, as opposed to the objective passage of time. What matters most is when you and your Shabbat. Now, there are ideas about when, relative to objective time, that should be, and one of them is when you can see 3 stars in the sky. But the question of, can I do melacha now, pertains to the individual reference frame. So there ends up being kind of a staged process for ending your Shabbat. Atah chonan tanu in the Amidah is step 1. In a sense, Shabbat ends there. What follows after that is weekday. It's weekday liturgy. It's a weekday Amidah with all the bakashot, all the requests that we make during the weekend. We avoid making on Shabbat. Then the Havdalah ritual is done in synagogue, and a new flame is lit for that. So Shabbat actually has to be over already in some sense in order to be able to do that melacha of lighting the Havdalah candle, right? Then, at least theoretically, when the men return home and make Havdalah again for their women and children who don't attend shul, there's another ending of Shabbat, as it were. So which one is the real end of Shabbat? Well, it kind of depends on your intention, in a sense. Shabbat is over for you when you decide that it's over for you. That's all for today. As always, our learning is dedicated to Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, the author of the Kitzur, and the historic Jewish community of Uzhhorod, Ukraine. We'll see you tomorrow.